Revenants are ghouls for whom the condition has become hereditary and who are capable of generating vitae without their own veins. In the world of darkness, it is possible for ghoul attributes to become inborn. Ghoul characteristics can, with effort, be inherited through several generations of ghouls through the breeding efforts of their vampire masters, resulting in a family of revenants, ghouls whose bodies naturally produce vitae. The word revenant, as used here, is technically a misnomer, since the word literally means undead, even though the revenant ghouls are very much alive. How the word revenant came to be the English word for a member of these ghoul families is most likely a result of an earlier Tzimisce nascent command of the English language. A revenant is a kind of hybrid creature that is both like and unlike mortals, ghouls and kindred. Some would say a revenant is halfway between a mortal and a vampire. Others would call it a corruption of God's creatures with the curse of Cain, mingling the two until they become inseparable. Nonetheless, a revenant has many qualities of both vampires and mortals, and has many characteristics of normal ghouls. Revenants can drink the blood of a vampire, but unlike a ghoul, they do not need to do so, as they can produce their own vitae, which also slow their aging. Unlike their masters, and despite their name, revenants are living creatures. Like a mortal, they need to eat, sleep, and breed. They are capable of sexual reproduction. Unlike a mortal, they are tougher and have access to supernatural powers from the Mark of Cain, along with the curses the Mark brings. Unlike normal ghouls, revenants are born, not created by drinking kindred blood. Revenants' bodies naturally produce a weak vampire-like vitae, which sustains their bodies far beyond normal human lifespans. Although not immortal, revenants can live to be hundreds of years old. They age at approximately 1/4 the rate humans do, and also gives them the ability to use disciplines. The revenant families were bred over many generations to serve the Tzimisce, and, later on, the Sabbat. They are not quite human, somewhere between human and vampire. They exist outside of society's norms. Some worship vampires as gods, while others aspire to achieve that state themselves. Revenants are families of ghouls constantly maintained by the Tzimisce who serve as mortal pawns and possible candidates for the embrace. Centuries of vampiric contract, infusions of vampiric blood, and inbreeding have transformed the revenants into a distinct type of supernatural creature. In modern nights, the ghoul families are largely relics. The Tzimisce originally used them as breeding stock, but have since largely moved along from them. The only things keeping most of the families from being exterminated in the final nights are certain useful services they provide for the Sabbat and the traditionalist tendencies of their Tzimisce patrons. Revenants suffer a lesser form of the Mark of Cain that affects vampires, including susceptibility to frenzy and Rotschreck. Rotschreck sounds better, as a result of having their own beast. This beast is much weaker than that of a vampire, but its potential triggers are more numerous. Because revenants do breed, because they are ghouls with these associated emotional problems, and because the Tzimisce were heavily involved in discovering this, ghoul families are more than a little bit bent. Cannibalism, incest, necrophilia, zoophilia, and generally insanity are all part of a family life. The families are also insanely wealthy, however, and generally hide their more depraved members from too much public view. Revenants are fanatically loyal to their vampire masters and consider themselves superior to the average human as well as regular ghouls. This added to their treatment by the Tzimisce and their inbred, unsavory lifestyles have shaped their mindsets into completely alien directions. Most revenants could never function as normal human beings. The four primary revenant families also provide the Tzimisce with a very diverse breeding stock, giving the clan a lot of flexibility in its memberships. Warriors, scholars, aristocrats, and freaks are all found in equal measure amongst the revenants. And this translates to them being found amongst the Tzimisce as well, once they embrace the revenants in question, of course. Many of the family's philosophies are indoctrinated into them from an early age. Some revenant families even follow the path of enlightenment, or roads in that case of exceptionally old revenants. The personality of the average revenant is often freakish and alien by society's standards, and inbreeding is not uncommon. In some families, it is all but certain. Each revenant family, or ghoul family, has been made by interbreeding a special type of ghoul, generally each with a similar set of features, outlooks, and even disciplines, until generations later something more stable and defined emerged from the mixture. At this stage, a ghoul family has developed its own characteristics, including a set of clan disciplines that are easier to learn, as well as often unique manifestations of the Curse of Cain. A Revenant family will often retain many of the traits of the vampiric clan that bred and sustained it. The Zamichi are well known for breeding their own ghouls, and over hundreds of generations produced the first Revenants. In the modern Knights of the World of Darkness, they are still the clan with the highest number of such beings in their service, although there are Revenant families in the service of other vampires. The four main Zamichi families are the biggest and most well established, and we'll start first with the Bratoviches. Historically servant to the Zamichi, the Bratovich have served their masters as guardians and taskmasters, specializing in the training of ghoul-bred dogs. Bratoviches became the most notorious of the Revenant lupine hunters due to their keen understanding of the lupines and their strategies. A majority of Zamichi in what is now Poland and along the border between Wallachia and Transylvania once came from the Bratovich stock. The family remained with the Zamichi and proudly fought against the Anarchs during the revolts. When the favor seemed to be on the side of the Anarchs, the opportunistic Bratoviches switched sides, betraying their masters to the hungry rabble. When the Sabbat formed after the Convention of Thorns, the Bratovich gladly allied themselves with the nascent sect. The family is no longer active within the Sabbat. Due to the family's peculiarities, most Sabbat avoid them at all costs, considering they can be even more vile than the sect itself. Occasionally, a nomadic pack will stay on Bratovich estate, but seldom for long. The horror stories concerning their demented games, their foul experiments, their repulsive diets, and their self-mutilations are innumerable. Every Bratovich seeks only power to survive in the brutal games of the family. Many seek their Zamichi masters for vicissitude, altered features, and have little to no understanding of how humanity functions. They live in dilapidated mansions filled with antiques and junk that has been with their family for centuries. The family primarily lairs in the North American wilderness, though a handful of outposts can be found in the South America, and the family's ancestral estate in Poland is still a respectably sized holding. They never clean their houses, so they are very dirty and disgusting. They cannot keep a servant, for any help goes insane, flees in terror, or becomes a meal for the family. Most Bratovich never see a normal human being, only their revenant cousins and vampires, and have trouble understanding why people would find it repulsive to drink blood or have an aversion to killing. Next, we'll be looking at the Obertus. When during the sack of Constantinople in 1204 of the Library of the Forgotten burned, the surviving Obertus monks were forced to flee the city. Over the following decades from Vienna to the Black Sea, these revenants established libraries and monasteries both in major cities and small towns. Simeon slowly reorganized the Obertus order into a substantial base of powers, his eyes and ears across Eastern Europe. As part of a treaty between Vladimir Rustovich and Lord Jurgen in 1225, the Obertus state was formed. A portion of Transylvania that was to serve as a buffer state between the Canaanite lords' territories, it was ruled over by Mika Vikos. From the clan's ancestral homeland in Eastern Europe, they were moved to the New World during the first waves of Sabbat colonization. They still maintain a strong presence in New England states and the eastern Canadian provinces. These knights, the Obertus, have managed to maintain their continued existence by avoiding the Sabbat's notice and by feeding their Zamichi patrons a steady trickle of research data. The children of the Drakon were primarily Obertus during their breeding years. The Obertuses can best be characterized as chthonic, both in their reclusive small-town nature and in their constant search for knowledge that they may not necessarily want. Obertus research tends towards the paranormal. ghouls, ghosts, beasts, and other denizens of the night, among other subjects. Elders among this Revenant family have come to believe that Revenant existence is the key to the next logical step in human evolution. Homo obertus is destined to replace Homo sapiens, just as modern humans exterminated the Neanderthal. To this end, the family conducts experiments with various permutations on the embrace and the ghouling process, using vitae from several captured Camarilla kindred, and even one Zemici elder who was foolish enough to enter voluntary torpor in an Obertus-controlled fishing town outside of Boston. No definite results have appeared yet, but the Obertuses believe they may be close to discovering the secret of permutating ghoul existence without a source of vampiric vitae. Thirdly, we have the Grimaldi. Integrated during the late Middle Ages into the clan, the Grimaldi were originally an Italian merchant family. Although not as powerful as those dynasties that would rise during the Renaissance, the Grimaldi were survivors, shifting their support among various noble houses and other dynasties. This allowed them to live in relative comfort while they were seldom seen as rivals. When the family expanded to Bohemia, they met several native Zemici voivodes who desired to gain a foothold within the Holy Roman Empire. The family was introduced to ghouldom swiftly and bloodily, and served as agents in lands most Zemici were uncomfortable to travel towards, or that lay in the hands of rival Cainites. When the Renaissance began, the Grimaldi successfully integrated themselves into the rising bourgeoisie. Siding with the anarchs during the revolt, the Grimaldi now served the Sabbat as deep cover agents who handled the unpopular affair of dealing with mortal agencies, preserving and maintaining the Masquerade, and supplying the sect with money. The Grimaldi are very successful at this, retaining a close touch to mortal society and being able to compete even with the Giovanni and Ventru. Many young Grimaldi are transferred from private schools to private school to guarantee the best possible education and hide the slow aging process and blood-borne quirks. Many Grimaldi silently fear the Sabbat and its inhuman ways, worrying that once their Zemici masters withdraw their protection, they will be torn to shreds for their soft ways. To this end, the family searches for ways to protect itself from that fate, either by making themselves too useful to be exposed, or seeking a way to defect. And finally we have the Zantosa. Originally known as the Zantovich, the family was highly regarded and well trusted. Known for its abundance of wealth and inclination towards cruelty, the family rose to power and held on to it until the Zemici clan collapsed during the Omen War. The Zantosa family quickly shifted its support to the Anarchs and later to the Sabbat. These ghouls spread throughout the rest of Europe and provided the Sabbat with information on the activities of the Camarilla. Today, most of the Zantosa are hedonists. Some are world travelers living the good life, while others are involved in the drug industry and slavery. However, the Zantosas harbor a grave secret involving the Zemici antediluvian. If this were ever discovered, the family would find itself at odds with the sect that continues to support it. Zemicis of nights past tended to have discriminating tastes when it came to who they granted vampiric immortality to. Rather than leaving the discovery of suitable children to the whims of chance, those Zemici decided to breed their prospective children starting from their mortal birth. The Zantoviches were originally bred for their social graces. When a Zantosa was embraced as Zemici vampire, they retained their human-focused presence as a bloodline discipline instead of gaining the animal-focused animalism that mainline Zemici possesses. Each of the Zemici's Revenant families similarly spawns a corresponding vampiric bloodline when embraced. As the concept of metamorphosis increased the popularity among the Zemici, they lost interest in human concerns such as societal niceties. So they lost interest in maintaining their socialite Zantovich breed and allowed the Zantoviches to degenerate into the hedonists they are tonight. This is the part where I ask for comments and subscribes. Thank you.